It has been a fascinating career for me. I wouldn't change any part of it. I have had challenges. I'm often the only woman in the room.
It is important for the world to see the face of America. They need to understand that we are a diverse society and that diversity is our strength.
Diplomats in the Foreign Service are the face of America around the world. They're charged with promoting peace and prosperity, advancing the interests of the United States, and protecting Americans abroad. In the past 2 decades, 3 women and 2 African Americans have served as Secretary of State, the top U.S. diplomat. But U.S. diplomacy has not always been diverse.
The chemistry and the makeup of the diplomatic corps did not represent the American people. It was predominantly male, it was predominantly white, it was predominantly upper and middle class.
To recast that image, the department has created programs and launched initiatives designed to ensure U.S. embassies and consulates around the world look like America today, diverse and multicultural. The goal is ambitious, and the results so far are mixed.
We've had to make some changes in the process so that we can target minority and women, and I think we've been very, very successful in terms of bringing women into the Foreign Service. About 50% of our classes coming in now, our incoming classes, are young women.
Women make up some 40% of all Foreign Service officers.
We're making significant progress at the entry level in bringing in a variety of people from different backgrounds. But when you look at the Foreign Service in terms of the mid-levels and the senior levels, the numbers are not there.
Women are doing relatively well. They hold important top posts, making up 30% of all senior positions.
We still have to do more to encourage minorities.
82% of Foreign Service officers and 86% of senior staff are white. It's not representative of a country that's 17% Hispanic, 14% African American, and 5% Asian American. African Americans are some 5.5% of Foreign Service officers and senior positions. Hispanics are underrepresented with about 5% in the officer ranks and 4.5% of senior staff. Asian Americans make up nearly 7% of officers with less than 4% at the senior level. In 1922, Lucille Acheson became the first woman accepted into the Foreign Service. At that time, only unmarried women without children needed to apply. 50 years later, in 1972, the service was opened up to married women and women with children. For male ambassadors and officers, that restriction never existed. In fact, how wives performed as hostesses was included in performance reviews.
That changed in the 70s too, but only in the 70s, so that the man's career was no longer dependent on whether his wife knew how to serve a tea properly. Before it was. This is no exaggeration.
In 1968, Foreign Service officer Allison Palmer filed and won a sex discrimination suit. A few years later, a class action suit helped pave the way for women's advancement in the Foreign Service.
The department has changed. When I joined my entrance class, I think 11 to 14% of the State Department was female.
While more women than men are now joining the Foreign Service, a 2010 study by Women in International Security found a pronounced and persistent gender gap in the senior Foreign Service. Ambassador Liliana Ayalde is one of the few who has broken through that glass ceiling. Hispanic and a woman, Ayalde serves in a highly visible post as ambassador to Brazil.
It's only as I look backwards now that I realized that I was opening ground. Looking at the pictures on the wall of all my former colleagues, of which there is only one more woman, and then myself, I realized, oh, geez, this is also breaking ground.
Liliana Ayalde's journey to ambassador was unique. She's not a political appointee like 1/3 of U.S. ambassadors, but she's also not career State Department. Ayalde began her Foreign Service career at the U.S. Agency on International Development, USAID, more than 30 years ago. This is her second posting as an ambassador.
I'm very proud of what you've done.
Challenges could have been there, but I never took anything as a roadblock. In many cases, I may have been the first woman that they had seen, and whether it was a director or, as I moved up as a mission director and then, of course, as U.S. ambassador. I think along the way, I may have represented something that people weren't prepared for. They look at my name, it's Hispanic, it's a Hispanic woman. They probably didn't expect it, but I did it.
Ambassador Ayalde granted to the contrary access to videotape a day, or more accurately 2 days, in the life of an ambassador. We followed her in the capital city of Brasilia and the megacity, Sao Paulo.
We certainly appreciate it.
It was a packed and exciting schedule. Television and newspaper interviews at a high-profile luncheon in Sao Paulo promoting Brazilian tourism to the U.S.
O turismo aos Estados Unidos com o brand USA.
A meeting with Afro-Brazilians about their concerns and how U.S. diplomats can help. And visiting a mural at the consulate that used soccer to connect American and Brazilian children. In the capital city of Brasilia, the ambassador visited the Casa Thomas Jefferson, a school where Brazilians young and old are learning English.
I understand fully because I have the same challenge with Portuguese.
She met with Brazilian youth ambassadors in a program designed to advance the relationship between the two countries. Ambassador Ayalde also convened an informal lunch gathering with women working at the embassy.
We try to inspire women that work here, support them, and build a network. We have 147 female employees in Brasilia and over 400 mission-wide. So we're a pretty significant percentage. And seeing women at the top of our profession, like Ambassador Ayalde, is really an inspiration.
This is what I tell young females that want to talk to me, and what are the ingredients to success, to getting where you are. I always had people that along the way were role models or mentors, and that has, as I look back, that helped me overcome some of the challenges that may have been more difficult for others.
Ayalde believes part of her mission is to pay it forward and mentor women coming up through the ranks.
There's been a lot of debate, especially in the past couple of years, and some from inside the foreign policy community, of, we can't have it all, then rebuttals, we can have it all. How hard charging do we need to be?
One of the hardest parts of the Foreign Service for women is the issue of employment for family members.
How do you balance work and family without having to deal with a guilty feeling?
It is definitely a concern for a lot of the women I've talked to. Can you raise a family at the same time have a career where you're moving around? I was able to do it, I don't know how. I did marry probably a little later than the rest of my friends. I have a husband who also came from the diplomatic life, so I think that helps understand the moving around, the building relationships with friends and connections in a country and then moving to another. It is hard, raising a family at the same time.
Many women voice concerns that flexibility is limited, and if you turn down important assignments for personal reasons, you'll sabotage your career. Ambassador Ayalde offers hope. She passed on an opportunity to serve in Afghanistan because she would have to be away from her family.
I felt that my daughters were at an age where they needed to have their parents together. It was more important to be with my kids, who soon will be away from their home and doing their own things. My family is important, and I figure that there'll be other opportunities, and there were.
She was later asked to assume the post of U.S. Ambassador to Brazil. Ayalde is one of a handful of Hispanic ambassadors. As a member of the Hispanic Employee Council of Foreign Affairs, or HECFA, Ayalde serves as a role model.
But anything I can do to help particularly young women move up in this career, but also balancing our lives as women, being mothers, being wives, and also being professionals.
HECFA is one of the affinity groups created to help support minorities and to attract them to the profession. Targeted recruiting is a key element, but Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield says the State Department faces competition. Corporations and other government agencies are also pursuing young, bright, motivated, and diverse talent.
That was one of our huge concerns. The fact that our diversity numbers have not gone significantly up, despite very aggressive recruiting programs that focus on getting more minorities interested. I came to the conclusion when I was Director General that we had to start recruiting in 8th grade.
Ambassador Thomas Greenfield has been in the Foreign Service for nearly 3 decades.
We have to do a better job of putting the faces of the Foreign Service out as part of our recruiting effort. And we have more and more of our recruiters going out to more diverse locations so that we can recruit from historical Black colleges and universities, Hispanic colleges and universities, going to universities where there are huge minority populations so that we can talk to them about the Foreign Service.
The challenge is complex and nuanced. So is the response. The State Department sponsors events and sends diplomats to numerous outreach activities at colleges and in communities. The Diplomats in Residence program gives the Foreign Service a full-time presence at strategic colleges and universities across the country.
We have 16 diplomats in residence who are assigned to campuses. Our efforts are designed to reach out to candidates coast to coast, from border to border, and even overseas, because many of our candidates now are working and studying abroad.
I am thrilled that I've been chosen to be the diplomat in residence at the University of California at Los Angeles. So I'll be going out and talking to students about my experiences in the Foreign Service and serving as a public servant overseas, all the different countries I've gotten to work and travel to.
I didn't know much about the Foreign Service or the State Department, so the fact that they went out and reached out to my university in California and tried to educate us on what the career entailed, I think that's our first step. And then once I got the fellowship, the mentorship I got, the internship experiences I received, those were all very helpful in shaping my career and helping me along the way.
Foreign Service generalists, we pride ourselves on being jacks of all trade, masters of some.
2 scholarship programs focus on increasing diversity in race, ethnicity, geography, gender, and sexual orientation. The Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship and the Charles B. Wrangell International Affairs Program are both highly competitive.
Demonstrate cultural awareness, why it was important, what did you learn?
According to our stats, this serves as the best way for us to continue to meet our diversity goals. I'm not saying that they assist us in meeting all of our diversity goals, but these certainly are major contributing factors to our success in meeting our diversity goals.
Work with them, let them mentor you, let them guide you.
The State Department offers 2 opportunities through the Wrangell Program. One brings undergraduates to Washington, D.C. for a few weeks each summer.
Where you do not agree with the president's policy, but you still have to implement it.
Absolutely.
Personally, I like to see candidates who are very engaging, very outgoing. They're inquisitive. Diplomats need to be inquisitive. You have to be willing to ask the questions.
How do you go about handling?
You show your resourcefulness and try and solve.
You're looking for a well-rounded individual that is very flexible and adaptable, easily adaptable.
I do want to say a special thanks to Congressman Charles Wrangell.
The Wrangell Program also offers graduate fellowships. Fellows receive financial assistance for graduate school, professional development, mentors, and paid summer internships in Washington, D.C.
You are part of our effort to ensure that we have a foreign service that reflects the face of America.
I'm a first-generation American. My family is from Egypt, originally from Alexandria, but I was born and raised in the U.S. Grew up in North Carolina in a small town that I could not wait to get out of. But I knew that I wanted to travel and see the world. And I had the opportunity to work at the American Embassy in Baghdad. So that was where I really got my experience and exposure to the Department of State and what a Foreign Service officer does and what that career would be like. The more exposure I had to Foreign Service officers, the more I really felt that that was a career that I wanted for myself. How do you balance possibly being pigeonholed into a certain area with the desire to diversify your portfolio?
My joke is like, can I be a Latina who's a specialist in the Middle East? Like, is that, you know? So you can
Most Foreign Service officers come to the State Department in their mid to late 20s. Many, like Sarah El Sayed, have worked overseas. Sarah worked on refugee issues in Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Nepal, and India. She'll do her graduate work at Princeton University. Dieta Cravens was a Wrangell undergraduate scholar and will attend Harvard University.
My background has a lot to do with why I chose to be in the Foreign Service. I grew up in Oklahoma. My dad is African American, my mom is Native American and Caucasian. I couldn't live in a more culturally diverse family. I think that at a very young age made me curious about the world. I went to a very small liberal arts college in Oklahoma, and one of my professors sent me an email just with a plain announcement about the Wrangell Program, and I've never been so happy to read an email. The Wrangell Program offers a lot more than entry to the Foreign Service. That's kind of the icing on the cake. But what you get from the Wrangell Program is a network of mentors who really care about you and care about the work you're going to do and care about your success. I've already taken the test and passed. All of these new buzzwords that are coming around diplomacy, how do you think they compare to traditional diplomacy?
It's still important.
Leaders in the Foreign Service and officers who have been through the scholarship programs meet with the fellows.
I was dealing with a much more senior counterpart who really just didn't really respect women. Every time we spoke, he would turn to my male colleague who was actually an intern, and every time I would bring him back. Like, actually, sir, if you want to deliver a message to the U.S. government, I'm the one you have to talk to. And I'm younger than you, and I'm a woman. Sorry.
And there are mock crisis role-playing exercises.
The first question is always, what does this earthquake mean to the U.S. citizens that we work with?
We're going to need bandages, we're going to need help, we're going to need medics. I guess our first priority is protecting the American citizens, right?
So we need to get the list of the citizens, the F-77.
We need to know what resources we need for our section.
Who's going to monitor what's going on in the media?
Is that the kind of situation where we would start removing people?
That's not a decision that we would make. That's guidance from Washington.
Right.
Okay.
Internships are a key component of the fellowship. Sarah El Sayed worked on Capitol Hill on a program focusing on refugees. Dieta Cravens interned in Representative Wrangell's office.
We have an obligation to represent them, and you take that with you to foreign countries.
If you move forward with sanctions.
The State Department also offers scholarships through the Thomas R. Pickering Fellowship.
So you will be interacting with the ambassador, with all of the key officers at post. So it's a great job. That was one of the best jobs I've had because
Thomas R. Pickering, Ambassador Pickering, took a personal interest in it and felt that, of course, it would only benefit the Foreign Service to have a wider range of perspectives, diverse ideas, experiences, backgrounds, because in its totality, that's what represents America. The reason why it continues to exist is because they have not successfully arrived at a percentage that reflects American society.
Mary Vargas was a Pickering Fellow. The daughter of immigrants, Vargas grew up in a tough neighborhood in East LA.
I was very curious about the world very early on. And when I started high school, I had an excellent European history teacher and world history teacher, and she told me about Model United Nations.
Vargas was encouraged to apply to George Washington University's School of International Affairs. She was accepted through the Women in Leadership program, which helped pay for her first 2 years of school.
My second year, I was a little bit concerned about my financial situation in college, and my parents weren't able to support me, and GW is a private school, so I started looking at the Pickering Fellowship.
Vargas is a 6-year veteran of the Foreign Service. She served in Mexico, Pakistan, and Iraq. She and her husband met in the service and are now serving together in Israel.
What are we making?
I met Clay in Tijuana. We were both first tour officers there, and we started dating towards the end of my tour. And so he still had a year left in Tijuana, and I had my next assignment to Pakistan all lined up. And so we were long distance for 15 months, and that happens a lot in the Foreign Service as well. So there's a lot of sacrifices that you make to eventually be together. But it worked out, and we got married during that year that I was in Pakistan and he was in Tijuana. Yeah, you can imagine how hard it is to plan a wedding from, two ends of the world, but we made it work, and it helped us get assigned together the next time around.
She has to flatter me like that I have some redeeming quality in the kitchen.
That's not.
She's very diplomatic.
Vargas and Alderman are a tandem couple. The service works with tandems because they hope to be able to live and work in the same country.
It's actually a lot easier to be married to another Foreign Service officer. A lot of our colleagues who have spouses that are not in the Foreign Service but who are also very ambitious and professionally driven, they find it difficult because one person has a job and they go from one country to another country every 2 or 3 years, and the other person has to find a brand new job.
Vargas is optimistic about the future of the Foreign Service becoming more representative of America.
Judging from the latest wave of hiring that took place between 2008 and 2010, things are changing quickly. But I think it's going to take a few generations and some time for that to reflect in the leadership of the Foreign Service.
Vargas staffed the HECFA booth at the open house for new recruits. Other affinity groups were available to help recruits navigate the landscape and understand there is a future for them in the Foreign Service.
Non-discrimination policies here and overseas, protections and benefits for same-sex spouses and domestic partners. I do believe that many LGBT plus people think they could have a career. But I think might be missing is models of success. And that's one of the things we're trying to provide. We don't just have LGBT plus officers, we have LGBT plus ambassadors.
With all the successes, a truly diverse Foreign Service still remains an unrealized goal. In fact, the number of African Americans in the service has actually decreased.
We have to do a better job in the department in mentoring, in supporting and encouraging officers, because I think we do have a retention issue. They need to see senior minorities in positions of authority so that they have something to reach for.
I have worked for several female and minority and other officers, and it's inspiring to see that and follow in these footsteps of these qualified, intelligent, dynamic leaders. Beyond just recruiting, though, I think it's more important than ever that the State Department retains all the minorities and the diverse group of officers that we have nurtured. How do we do that? Family support, technology, and also mentoring that all contribute to officers staying happy and staying in the Foreign Service.
They're trying to provide a more flexible workplace for women, offering flex time, job shares. In terms of just the career success of females in the Foreign Service, they leave at certain points, and we're trying to figure out why. Is it because they are now focusing on their children? Are they focusing on their parents who are now aging? Is it institutional? Is there something cultural? Is there something else happening that causes them to leave and not continue in the Foreign Service and rise up to the most senior ranks?
We've done a lot in the State Department to focus on those work-life balance issues, to encourage more employment opportunities for partners and spouses who are following the employee overseas. We look for opportunities to engage with our accompanying family members so that they too can feel satisfaction.
We are doing a much better job, but it's been a conscious effort of having programs that are energized and more in tune with the way things work today and the way recruitment should be done. It's not static, it's not passive, but it's very active, but it's relatively new. I was just at the Global Chief of Missions Conference where, yes, there are women, but race is not appropriately represented when you looked at the leadership.
Despite the challenges, Foreign Service officers and senior staff working towards a more diverse diplomatic corps remain committed.
It's essential that we show the diversity of America within the diversity of the Foreign Service, because that's what makes us America.
If we're representing America and we're trying to tell America's story and we're trying to develop friendships based on our history and who we are, you have to tell that story from many different perspectives. One individual does not embody the American experience.
It makes the promise in our founding documents true. It gives us sort of the moral high ground to encourage countries that have significant minority populations to open up their societies, to empower women. It shows other countries that diversity is a good thing.
Everything that I do outside of my work duties is dedicated to bringing more diversity into the Foreign Service. And I believe it's extremely important because I have seen overseas what an advantage it is to have a diverse background when you're interacting and engaging with foreign audiences.